Welcome to a new series here on Dignity Talks. My name is Ritva. I am a licensed psychotherapist and I live in Finland, and I work and have worked in healthcare, particularly in the field of mental and psychological care for past 26 years. Over those years, I have sat with countless stories of strength, stories of exhaustion, stories of people who function well on the outside, but feel internally driven by something they don't fully understand. And again, I have seen this. Many people are not living deliberately, they are living adaptively. This new series is called Renewed, Waking Up from Survival Mode. In the previous journey, we explored identity and dignity, who you are before God beneath shame and distortion. Now, at this series, we move deeper, not into who you are, but into how your mind has been shaped. Because many of us learned very early how to survive, how to stay acceptable, how to avoid rejection, or how to manage expectations, even how to function under pressure. And over time, those survival patterns began to feel normal. But what if normal is not your original design? Romans 12 verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And this series is about that renewal. Not self-improvement, not trying harder, but waking up to the patterns that have quietly shaped you. And across these 5 episodes, we will explore at this video conforming without knowing it. Next video, the inner climate of the mind. And third, light as awareness, not accusation. Fourth, from survival to intention. And fifth, transformation without force. This is not a series about pressure. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing where survival once protected you and where renewal is now inviting you go forward. If you have ever felt exhausted from overfunctioning, if you have ever sensed you are reacting more than choosing, if you have ever wondered why change feels so difficult, this series may be for you. Let's dive into today's topic. What if your normal is actually a survival pattern? Not dramatic behavior, not obvious dysfunction, just the way you think, the way you react, or the way you relate. What if what feels natural was actually learned? Romans 12 verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by renewing of your mind." We often can read this as moral instruction. Don't follow culture, don't be influenced, or try harder to be different. But what if the most exhausting parts of your personality were never your personality at all? What if they were survival patterns? The constant busyness, the over-explaining, the over-pleasing, to the need to stay useful. What if those weren't your identity, but adaptation? Again, Romans 12, verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. But what if conforming doesn't just mean culture out there? What if it means patterns inside you? When we hear the pattern of this world, we often think culture. But psychologically, the pattern of this world can also mean internalized expectations or fear-based adaptation, performance-driven identity, or busyness as proof of worth, or self-silencing to preserve belonging. These patterns rarely feel dramatic. They feel normal. They sound like, don't make others uncomfortable. Stay useful. Don't be too much. Be impressive. Don't need too much. And the reason they feel natural is because they were learned early. Because children learn quickly what gets approval, what causes tension, what threatens connection. So they adapt. And over time, adaptation becomes automatic. And automatic becomes personality. And personality becomes identity. But here's the key. Just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's original. The nervous system is designed for survival. If connection once depended on staying quiet, you learned quietness. If safety depended on being competent, you became competent. If love depended on not having needs, you learned to minimize them. Conformity, in this sense, is not rebellion against God. It's intelligent adaptation to environment. But what protected you once may now restrict you. And that is why Paul doesn't say, try harder. He says, do not conform, which implies something subtle. You may already be without realizing it. And this is why the second half of the verse matters so much. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not by forcing behavior, not by shaming yourself, but by becoming aware. Because you cannot step out of a pattern you cannot see. Renewal begins always with noticing, not judging, not fixing quick, not correcting, but noticing. And this is the beginning of waking up. But psychologically, this verse may be describing something much quieter and much deeper. Confirming it is rarely conscious. Most of us did not wake up one day and decide to absorb the patterns around us. No. We adapted early age. As children, we learned what gets approval, what causes tension, and what keeps connection, and what invites rejection. We internalize tone, expectation, rules that were never written down. And over time, those adaptations stopped feeling like strategy. They started feeling like personality. I'm just like this. I've always been this way. This is just how I am. But what if you're just who I am was once who I needed to be? What if your normal, your busyness, your self-silencing, your hyper-independence, your people-pleasing, what if it was actually intelligent adaptation? Because children conform to survive. Nervous system conform to stay safe. Minority voices conform to avoid exclusion. Conformity is not weakness. It's often intelligence. But what kept you safe once may now be shaping you without your awareness. And that is where this verse becomes powerful. Do not conform. It's not accusation. It's awakening. Because you cannot step out of a pattern until you first see, recognize, know it. What if the parts of you that you feel too much were once the reason you survived? Your hyper-awareness, your independence, your people-pleasing, your perfectionism. What if those weren't weaknesses? What if they were just intelligent adaptations? There is something very important we need to say clearly. Adaptation is not failure. Many people conformed because they had to. Children adapt, and our nervous system adapts. Minority voices adapt. Trauma survivors adapt. When connection feels uncertain, the mind learns very quickly what keeps me safe, what keeps me included, and what reduces threat. And it adjusts, not because you are weak, but because you are intelligent. Conformity, in this sense, can be brilliant. It kept you safe, it kept you connected, and it kept you included. And for a season, that mattered more than authenticity. But here is the quiet shift. What kept you safe once may now keep you small. If staying quiet once prevented rejection, you may still silence yourself, even when it's no longer necessary. Or if being hyper-competent once earned approval, you may still overfunction, even when rest is allowed. Or if minimizing your needs once preserved connection, you may still struggle to ask for help, even when support is available and willing. The nervous system does not automatically update. It repeats what once worked. And this is why Romans 12:2 is not accusation. It is invitation. Do not conform. And not because adaptation was wrong, but because you are no longer where you were once. Transformation begins when you realize that you can thank the pattern without continuing to live inside it. You can honor the strategy without letting it define you. And you can say, this helped me survive. And maybe also, it's no longer the only way. And that's where renewal begins. Not with self-criticism, but awareness. What if you're not actually choosing your reactions, but repeating them? What if most of your stress, your overthinking, your people-pleasing, your defensiveness isn't intentional? What if it's autopilot? Autopilot living is not dramatic. It's subtle. It's reacting before reflecting. It's assuming before discerning. It's defending before understanding. And psychologically, autopilot looks like automatic thoughts, threat-based interpretations, chronic vigilance, people-pleasing reflexes. You walk into a room and instantly scan, am I accepted here? Did I say something wrong? Do I need to adjust? And no one told you to do that. It's your nervous system who did. Because once scanning kept you safe. Autopilot forms when repetition meets emotion. If certain reactions once prevented rejection, your brain encoded them as necessary. If staying agreeable once reduced conflict, your system stored that pattern. If hyper-awareness once avoided danger, vigilance became normal. Over time, reaction becomes identity. I'm just anxious. I'm just like this. I always overthink. But many of those patterns are not personality actually. They are unexamined repetition. And repetition feels like truth. Spiritually, autopilot often means living from fear instead of trust, reacting instead of discerning. Romans 12:2 doesn't just say, don't conform. It invites transformation. And transformation requires consciousness. Because you cannot discern God's will if your reactions are automatic. You cannot live intentionally if your mind is running yesterday's survival code. So, here is the question. Where are you living on autopilot? In your relationships? In your faith? In your self-talk? Where are you reacting instead of choosing? Not to shame yourself, but to wake up. Because renewal doesn't begin with effort. It begins with awareness. And awareness is the first interruption of autopilot. And what if the reason you're exhausted is because you're trying to transform yourself? Again, Romans 12:2 does not say transform yourself. It says be transformed. That difference changes everything in this. We often approach spiritual growth like self-improvement. Try harder, fix your reactions, control your thoughts, manage your behavior. But the text does not comment self-forcing. It says, be transformed. That verb is passive. It implies something happens to you, not something you manufacture. So transformation is not pressure, it's renewal. Psychologically, this is profound. Lasting change rarely happens through force. It happens when the nervous system experiences safety. Self-judgment softens, and curiosity replaces self-surveillance. You don't change by attacking yourself. You change when your internal posture shifts. Renewal suggests gradual reorientation, inner recalibration, and new way of relating to yourself. And this is not willpower, not behavior management. This is mind renewal. Spiritually, this means transformation is relational. It happens in connection, in surrender, in allowing truth to replace fear. Be transformed suggests that renewal occurs when pressure decreases, not increases. When you stop gripping, when you stop performing, when you stop trying to force holiness through anxiety. Transformation is not frantic effort, it's alignment. And alignment begins with awareness, because you cannot renew what you refuse to notice. So maybe, just maybe, the question is not how to fix myself, but rather where is my mind still shaped by survival? And where is God inviting renewal? Not through force. And what if renewing your mind has nothing to do with positive thinking? Not repeating better thoughts, not forcing gratitude, not controlling every negative idea. Because renewal goes deeper than thoughts. It changes the stance from which you think. Where we hear renewal of the mind, many of us think about replacing bad thoughts with good ones, and that's okay. You can work little by little with that, but the word mind here points to something deeper than individual thoughts. It points to orientation, your inner posture. That emotional climate inside in you, deep inside you. And psychologically, many people don't just think certain thoughts. They live inside an atmosphere. That's where we grow, that's where we live. An internal tone shaped by earlier experiences. For example, a mind oriented toward self-protection. A mind shaped by shame or vigilance. A mind trained to anticipate rejection. And a mind organized around perfection. Those are not conscious choices. They are adaptations. So renewal of the mind means becoming aware of that internal climate. Not attacking it, not shaming it, but seeing it. It means that becoming aware of inherited patterns, questioning what is no longer life-giving, and allowing safer internal experiences, moving from external pressure to inner coherence. And this is not about thinking better thoughts. It is about inhabiting a different posture. And that is from threat-based orientation to secure orientation. And that shift changes everything. Spiritually, renewal moves you from conformity to discernment. When your mind is shaped by fear, you react. When your mind is renewed, you discern. You test, you approve. You choose intentionally. Renewal makes space between stimulus and response, between expectation and obedience, between fear and faith. It is not self-improvement. It is inner reorientation. And that is why transformation cannot be forced. It must be allowed. So perhaps, just perhaps, renewal begins with a simple question. You can try this. What is the emotional tone of my inner world? Is it urgency, self-criticism, hyper-responsibility, vigilance? Or is it becoming steadier? Because renewal is not loud. It is subtle. It is the slow shift from surviving your life to inhabiting it, but through awakening. And what if God is not asking you to try harder, but to wake up. Not to improve faster, not to control yourself better, not to perform more spiritual, but to notice, be safe, to see what has been shaping you. Now, as we close this first episode, I want to leave you with something reflective. Romans 12:2 is not pressure. It is God's invitation. It is not fix yourself, but it is wake up. Because you cannot step out of a pattern you have never questioned. So, there are 2 questions to sit with this week. What patterns in your life once protected you, but may now be shaping you without your permission? And where might God be inviting you? Not to try harder, but to become more aware. Awareness is not weakness. It is dignity. It is the moment you stop living automatically and being living intentionally. Not rejecting your past, not shaming your adaptations, no, but gently recognizing I am no longer where I once was. And perhaps renewal begins just right there. Not forcing it, not in fear, but in waking up. If this message resonated with you, if you are beginning to recognize patterns you have never questioned, I invite you warmly to stay with this journey. In the next episode, we will go deeper into what Paul calls the renewal of the mind. And we explore the inner climate that shapes how you experience yourself and the world around you. So if this direction of growth feels aligned with what you need right now, subscribe to the channel. Not out of obligation, but it's easier for you to find the next part and stay connected to the process. Because I know from my work, growth is rarely instant. It unfolds layer by layer. And if this is your season of renewal, you don't have to walk it alone. You can walk it with me, with us at DignityTalks. And this is where we wake up gently. Let's finish this video with prayer. Father, if there are patterns shaping us that we cannot yet see, bring them gently into light. Not with accusation, not pressure, but with clarity. Where we have been living on autopilot, help us wake up. Where survival has shaped our thinking, begin renewing our minds. Teach us to notice without shame, to grow without fear, and to trust that transformation does not come from force, but from your steady work within us. In Jesus' name, amen.